Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today, as pre-arranged, will be the answers to the questions left under the Q's and A's video yesterday. Some might say you didn't get long to put your questions up. It was a last minute decision, sorry. And we've had one, I was going to call it a complaint, it's a statement. I'm going to read it out and embarrass the person, because basically I've got to go through all the things that have been put to me, so be it. And this from somebody who can't even be bothered to edit their user generated name for their channel. Anyway, we have quite a lot to get through. Some are more of an essay than a question. Some will probably only get a very, very short answer, still a valid answer. But the questions vary quite a bit, including some that are repeats, fair enough. But you have to bear in mind, since I changed the nature of the channel itself to try and get the growth to speed up a bit, which seems to have worked, I've got a lot of new subscribers. And bearing in mind there are viewers that never subscribe to anybody, out of the new subscribers there's more viewers than that probably. So there's new people on the channel that might not have, this might be their first Q's and A's. So be it. But before we get going, big thanks to everybody who supports the channel in whatever form. Thank you for that. Obviously watching the videos is a form of support. Watching the adverts is a form of financial support. We've got the memberships, we've got the patrons, and we've also got the buy me a coffee for the one-off type donations. Thanks for all of it, basically. It makes it worthwhile for me doing it, because if none of that happened, why would I bother? You have to stop and think, why do I bother? And I bother because I like the way it works and the way you people leave comments, some interactions. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. And that includes these questions and answers. I know one person said, I don't know how you can do it, it must be nerve-wracking. Well, I do get a chance to look through them before I start, don't I? And in one case this morning, I've had to look something up, you know. So, here we go then. Those that have got sensible channel names, we'll get them read out. Those that haven't might not. Right, so I'm doing it a bit differently this time, you'll notice. The camera is a lot farther back and I'm in a different place. Normally I do this there so that I don't have to unplug the laptops. Basically laziness. It's the length of the lead so I can leave everything plugged in. And it means that the camera is sitting here right on top of the laptop. But I've decided to push the camera back this time and lower the laptop so that the camera looks over the top. This means I can read the laptop while still looking at yourselves. The way it used to work, the laptop was up high and I was having to do this all the time to look through the bit of my variable focals that actually allows me to read the questions, whereas now I don't. I can hold my head normally and still look through the bottom half of my glasses, which is how they're designed. Right, we've got Daniel M. When did you start growing orchids? How long have you been growing for? Was there any particular moment that you got hooked? Now this is a repeat question, it comes up every time basically. I could say the start point, the very, very start point was I had an orchid when I was at college. That's a long time ago. Yeah, when men used to walk in front of cars with a red flag, that long ago, yeah? So, yeah, a long time ago. But that was just an orchid that was probably, in my mind's eye, nothing more than a plant, just a plant, you know. Nothing much happened after that until I didn't have any in Dorchester when I lived there. Once I got my own place, the sort of, you know, place in the country sort of thing, I had a dining room that had patio doors at one end facing north, a west window and a south window, a room flooded with light. that had a dining room table, yeah, and I used to have some orchids on there. How long ago that was, it's difficult to tell, and they were mainly Phalaenopsis, but I know there was an Oncidium in there, Sherry Baby, because the kids, as they were in those days, wanted me to buy that because of the fragrance while we were walking around a garden centre. So quite a long time ago. It became serious when I moved into my mum's place, and I had quite a few cattleyas on the kitchen windowsill. I had some orchids on the dining room table, which was up against the patio doors for the conservatory, but the conservatory was either too hot or too cold, it didn't work. Then I converted that, and that's when it got serious basically, once I converted that. How many years ago that was, I can't really remember, but I would say it's got to be at least 15, it may be heading up towards 20 now, I'm not sure. Hang on, how old am I? Yes, it's probably nearer 20 now. So a fair amount of time. And don't forget, the YouTube channel didn't start then, it started sort of later along the way. So that's that. Was there any particular moment that you got hooked? Yeah, I think it was when I got some cattleyas in on the kitchen windowsill and a few different types of orchids on the dining room table, and desperately wanted to expand, so converted the conservatory into what became that grow room. That's when I took it more seriously and wanted more space for more orchids and more types of orchids. So yeah, some time ago. Right, we've got, I must clean this screen, just to read stuff. It's in the shadows mainly, so little spots and things, you know, splashes from coffees and stuff like that. They don't show until you get out here in the bright light. It needs a good clean. I need a cleaner. Right, this is Ryan Millet. I could do with getting this a bit bigger, couldn't you? Let me just see if I can do that. Let's just make this text a bit bigger. There we go. As long as it still scrolls. Yes, it does. Right, there you are. This doesn't really make sense. Possibly translated, I don't know. But it's basically talking about Dendrobium, anosmum and aphyllum and other such pendant dendrobiums traditionally grown as mounted. Can they be grown in pots, and if so, what advice do you have? They do like to be pendant. They can be staked upright and they'll still do okay, but they never seem to do as well, and the blooms don't look as good as when the things. If you really need to put it in a pot, then you can put the plant in the pot and put the pot over at an angle. Yeah? You might need to put a few little bits of wire across to stop it falling out, because they can get quite heavy with lots of stuff. But yes, and then fix your pot somehow or other. But yes, they can go in a sideways on pot. That works quite well. I've seen that work well. And then we've got Marie Pittman. Why would one of my cattleyas put up a flower sheath and then it goes brown and nothing else happened? Now, I've had this happen on occasions when I had lots of cattleyas, which I don't have now. This was a couple of months ago and no environmental factors have changed. Right, there are some cattleyas that put up the sheath and the buds lay dormant and don't grow for some time. And then at a later date, depending on the plant or the hybrid, the buds start to grow. During that time, if the air is not moist enough, the sheath will go brown and go quite crispy. It will die effectively, whereas with good humidity it would probably stay green. Yeah, so that's the reason they go brown. And then if the orchid hasn't got enough strength to produce blooms, it won't do it. So you end up with a blind sheath that produces nothing. I've had that on occasions. A word of warning, if your sheath does go brown and feels quite sort of woody, but you can see some bud swelling, very carefully nip the top so that there's an opening that the buds can push through, because they can get trapped. But very carefully, you take the top of the spike off. Lady Gemming, my question is, when do you plan to move your Cymbidiums into the garden? As soon as I flipping can, so I get my space back. What day and night temperatures is ideal for them to be outside? And then there's another part to the question. We'll do that one first. I'm planning, hopefully this week, this coming week, to actually make my staging. Yeah? If things go wrong and I don't get my Cymbidium staging ready at an appropriate time, then I will use the staging I've already made that have got bonsai on it temporarily for the Cymbidiums, and the bonsai can be dotted around like on the staging and on the table. Yeah, I'll find other places for them, temporarily of course, but I'm hoping to get that staging done. Then I've got to watch the weather. The weather we've been having lately, no. I would say mid-May I will start thinking about it. But if we get weather like we've been having this week, I'll have to wait, because basically the night temperatures have been dropping right down. Places not far from here have had a frost, so I wouldn't dream of putting them out when the night temperatures are that low. Day temperatures don't matter that much, quite honestly. They're bound to be 10 degrees plus where I live, so the daytime temperatures will be fine. But the nighttime temperatures could do with being 10 degrees plus, and the daytime temperatures up around the 20 mark. That would be okay. Better if the temperatures are a bit higher than that. Above 20 degrees C for daytime temperatures is not necessary. Most of the Cymbidium types I've got are cooler growers. They don't need those daytime temperatures. They're probably going to get them, but they don't need them. So that's that. But it's the night temperatures you've got to watch. I've got lots of new growths pushing on nicely. Too cold on successive nights, they'll stall. They'll come back once the temperatures come up, but yeah, try not to. That's the easy way. Yeah, so middle of May is my aim. It may not happen, it may wait even longer. Right, JND90. How on earth can I get my Miltonia to flower? We have to practice. I have Miltonia, oh goodness me, Estrelita Sweet Senorita, which grows but does not flower. It's a division that I've had for 3 years. Right, generally speaking, a Miltonia will produce one growth a year from a division, depending on how many bulbs it starts with. It can produce 2 growths per bulb and set off in 2 directions, in which case you're doubling the size in half the time. But with a division, the division has got to reach blooming size. Now with a seedling, literally grown from seed, that could take 4 or 5 years. So you have to think about your division. It's got to get to the right size to be able to bloom. So if it's not blooming size, that you just need to keep growing it on, keep it going, keep it strong. It will bloom eventually. But Miltonias are an awkward Oncidium alliance type, because to get them to bloom they need quite a lot of light. Overcook it and the leaves will go all pale yellow, and then they stop photosynthesizing properly and the plant starts to deteriorate. So that light's got to be as high as possible, but not over the top. If it goes over the top, your leaves will go pale. And don't increase light in one big go. Do it gradually. And what I would say is try and do it gradually, you know, every sort of 10 days or so, move it somewhere a bit brighter, until at some point you see the lights start, the leaves start to change colour, and then put it back to where it was the one before. Something like that. Right, Mama Bear 9389. When repotting orchids, do you have any tips for getting the media around the roots? Yeah, do it dry. You do it wet, the media will stick to everything and not go where you want it. So that's first tip, without disturbing them too much. I tend to get air gaps. My media is chunky and some of the bark pieces are bigger than others, so various sizes. Yeah, that's good. these tend to be more difficult to get down around the roots. Not sure if I need a different kind of media where the chunks are smaller. I can't say really without sort of seeing. That would be something I'd have to see. But then it ends with, these are Phalaenopsis orchids. So first and foremost, apart from a few moister type species that have much finer root systems, the phals, store-bought, mass-produced, that have chunky roots don't mind air gaps. They prefer to have more media than air gaps, so don't go too mad. But if you get air gaps here and there in a potted Phalaenopsis, is not a big deal. Really isn't a big deal, so don't worry too much about it. But if you are worried that your chunks are a bit big, then try going one size down and do half and half, something like that. That's that one. Oh, I didn't notice that. And the next one is from Mama Bear. It's actually about the same thing. I was wondering what the best media recommendations are for Phalaenopsis. I would say medium to large bark is just good. And once they get settled in a pot with that type of bark, that bark should last 3 or 4 years, bearing in mind those types of Phalaenopsis need to be virtually dry before you water them again. Yeah? So the bark's not wet all the time, which means it will last a lot longer than if it was. Yeah? So they can stay in their pots for quite a long time. And then you don't disturb the roots, which is good. Right. Andrea Alum, 8859. What sort of orchids would be okay to grow on a windowsill, apart from the usual ones in my living room? Well, firstly, I don't know what the usual ones are, so I'm shooting a bit blind on there. Orchids that can grow on a windowsill depends entirely on which way that windowsill faces. If it faces south, then during the summer months very little will grow in that sun through glass, it's too strong. A north facing window, at certain times of year like winter time when the days are shorter, the light's not bright enough for many types of orchids. It's just too dull facing north. Your eyes and your brain adjust. You walk in the room with the north facing window and your brain and your eyes say, yep, light's fine. It's not. It's quite dull. West or east facing windowsills are pretty good. I prefer the east. We're talking northern hemisphere here. I can't do southern hemisphere. Their seasons are back to front, and it makes what I say 6 months too early or 6 months too late, if you know what I mean. But yes, an east facing window in the northern hemisphere is going to get morning sun. Morning sun is weaker and it hasn't had chance to build up heat yet. Yeah, west facing is stronger sun, generally speaking, and the temperatures would be higher. The other thing you need to think about is it an orchid that requires quite high humidity? Because in your home and windowsills, humidity is not going to be that good. Now, some plants are quite tolerant of that and others are not. Others will just not grow. So you'd have to be selective. Hello, Misery Guts is having a sing-song. Right, next we've got Chris Schmidt, 2167. Starts off with, this is not an orchid question, and I'm already reading it. And it is to do with the bonsai side of life, so we won't do that. Well, at least he. But I don't do Q's and A's on the Gardening and Bonsai channel. I never will, I doubt, because the channel is too small. You know, I can load a bonsai video and get 150, 200 views. That's the viewing audience for those types of videos. It's not enough to do a Q's and A's. Right, next one is one of these users. So user OR2UG1ID4H. For goodness sake, just edit it. It's not difficult. If you're on a laptop or computer, it's dead easy. But if you're on a phone, it's not so straightforward. I think you have to download the YouTube Studio app, where you get all the functionality, including changing your channel name. Get it to something that reflects yourself a bit better rather than that. Anyway, my cat insists on chewing the leaves on my Oncidium. You can get a squirt gun. Will this stunt the plant? Well, it's not going to do it any good. I mean, my daughter Hannah suffers with that. She, you know, there's lots of play. She can have some phenopsis. They don't seem to touch them. But as soon as an Oncidium walks in the room, it'll be chomped. Dendrobium's the same. So, whereas my cat doesn't touch them. He's got access to lower down orchids in here. He doesn't touch them. So, will it stunt the plant? Well, yes and no. The leaves need to photosynthesize. The more leaf area you've got, the more that will happen. So the smaller the leaves, the less it happens. So if possible, put your orchid somewhere where the cat can't get at it. And I know that can be difficult because, I mean, not my cat, he's an old cat, but with young cats, they can get up pretty high, especially on two-stage jumps, you know, boink, boink, and they're up flipping near the ceiling, aren't they? But it probably won't stunt the plant to any great extent, but it's not going to do it any good. And the other problem you've got is the nature of what cats do to leaves. Leaves wounds, and they can be prone to infections because those wounds are open on the leaves. Right, oh, now we've got another one. User JQ8GN3L09S. Right, I'm only 1 year into orchids but have over 200. My first statement will be, are you overdoing it? Are you overstretching? Because when the novelty wears off, you're left with the workload. I'd say that's a bit heavy-handed for your first year. But it's up to you. It's also a hell of an expense. Right, I'm in New England, that means nothing to me. As we were losing light last fall, I set up a grow room with pretty ideal conditions, but lower humidity because it's inside my house. Yeah, that's the downside of growing inside, is you can't bump the humidity right up. Well, you can, but you get green walls and curtains and carpet. So grow lights, heater, humidifier that stays around 50 to 60%. For many orchids, that's fine. That's enough, as long as your temperature doesn't climb too much. And fans, etc. The room is getting to a high of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that means nothing to me. Now, just with the lights on, no heater for about a month. So that's the temperature it's getting to without a heater on. My question is, hang on, we've got to read more here. It's an essay. Oh, cracky it is as well. My question is, now that we are coming into warmer weather, should I move my guys outside to a screened porch, or should I just keep them in the room that is already set up? My porch is on the west side of the house, if that matters. Yes, it does. I have phals, Oncidiums, Cattleyas, Ingracums, Maxillarias, Epidendrums, Tolumnias, Dendrobiums, various types, Encyclias, Miltonias, and some odds and ends. That's a vast array, and in amongst those there are some that wouldn't match the conditions of some of the others, depending on what types of Dendrobiums. If you're looking at winter resters and you're in a warm room, they won't get their rest, they won't bloom very well, or it's unlikely they will. However, some of the others are going to do really well in a warm room, provided they've got the light and the day lengths provided by those lights. Quite honestly, if it's an almost perfect setup, which it sounds like it is, and your plants are growing really well, I'm going to come down with the oldest statement: if it's not broke, don't fix it. But up to you. But it'll be an effort to change them, and the change could stall some of them. Right, now we've got Naomi Mittel. Thanks, Roger. Do Oncidiums need direct strong light? I have mine facing south. There's a yes and no, because if we're talking pure Oncidiums within the genus Oncidium, I'm not talking about intergenerics or alliance type genera, this is just the Oncidiums, There are cooler, shadier ones and highlight ones, so you'd have to come down to the individual plant level. And when you get into hybrids, it starts getting more difficult. Species, you can look them up direct. But Oncidiums need what I call good light. So they're not shady orchids, but within them there are some. You know, you've got the Miltoniopsis come into the Oncidium Alliance. They don't like bright light, you know. So you've got to go careful within that. You've got Brassias in the Oncidium Alliance. They like very high light, almost to the point of damaging the leaves, just underneath that type of light. So it depends on the type. I have mine facing south. If you're talking about indoors facing south, then I would suggest they don't get any direct sun on them, because that would be midday sun. If the window's facing south and you're in the northern hemisphere, that's midday sun. It's too strong, it's too much. It's too much for most orchids, quite honestly. Right, moving swiftly on. Gloria Bischoff, I think that's pronounced right. Hi Roger, is it okay to mist orchids? I grow in a very warm tropical climate and my few Dendrobiums sit outside, aside from the traditional water feed cycle. Can I mist them every few days without doing them any harm? You can mist, and possibly I could include the word should. I don't. But if you've got high temperatures, your rate of evaporation up through the plant, because the plant's not in its natural state where it would have established a good root system, be anchored on nicely, and that's where it lives, you've disturbed it, or sorry, we disturbed them and put them in a pot. So that's not ideal. And they won't, under normal circumstances, be able to get enough moisture up through the plant to keep it hydrated in its entirety in high temperatures. Therefore, misting is a very good idea. I mean, in some nurseries they have a sprinkler system where they absolutely soak the plants. But that's when it's warm. If it's not warm, don't get your plants wet. Seriously, they don't need it. But with, you know, it says here warm tropical climate. Well, many of our orchids come from warm tropical climates. Some of them come from monsoon areas where it absolutely persists down virtually every day, and they get absolutely soaking wet, but there's airflow, yeah? So don't get plants wet if they're going to stay wet going into the evening and the night. That's not good. Apart from that, if you're in a tropical climate, it will do no harm. Well, this is not a question. Susan Hall and some letters. For your information, Rick is back and he mentioned your channel. Cheers, Rick. I did know he was back, and I've watched only a few, but the videos he's submitted, yes, I have watched. And then the same person again, Susan Hall. Any tips for anchoring orchids in the pot when you repot? I struggle with this. Several ideas. I've got videos showing some of those ideas. One of the ideas is a hole either side of the pot near the top, and get your plant in such a position that it's slightly above those two holes, and then push a stake through the first hole over the rhizome and then push it down into the second hole, and it'll hold the plant tight on top of the media. Yeah, that's one. You can also wire them in place. I've done that before, where you get a piece of flexible wire, I mean I use my bonsai wire, and just come up through one of the holes in the bottom of the pot, over the rhizome and down through another one, and just twist it off, basically holding it firmly in place. Quite tall plants in small pots that have just been repotted are almost impossible to stake, because the stake won't stay upright. The stake's as wobbly as the plant. A way round that is to put the stake down the outside of the pot and hold it in place with some duct tape. Yeah, a couple of pieces of duct tape will hold it rigid to the pot. Now, because of the angle of the pots, it'll be heading away from the, you know, the upright position, but it'll hold the plant still. And then you can put your clip or whatever around it. That's that. Wanda Shaw. Hello Roger. If you had a choice between hybrid or species orchids, which would I prefer? Now, I was trying to explain to my friend Helen about this because I wouldn't say I'm in a unique position, but I'm in a different position to many people who grow orchids. We all agree that on occasions we are subject to pretty blooms must have zombie effect. Yeah, we just see them and we think, I've got to have that, and then you get it home and think, I've never heard of that, I'm not sure I can grow that. Well, it's better to do that before you buy it. But I run an orchid channel and it's important to me. There are a lot of species that are what I would call more insignificant than some of their hybrid cousins. And I need stuff that's bright and blousy, basically. I mean, if you take like Dendrobiums, which I think are now cotyledons. It's funny actually, I objected to that and then I looked into it. Cotyledons, look at the leaves. Dendrobiums, look at the leaves. Plants are very similar. Oh yeah, but the blooms are totally different. The Dendrobiums are tiny. Yeah, being tiny doesn't make them different, does it? And then when you start looking at the Dendrobium blooms and their shape, they are quite cotyledony-like. But the cotyledons are big and blousy with nice colours, so I have some of them. I don't have any Dendrobiums. They're too small. They don't work for the YouTube channel. So a lot of my orchids are chosen to look good in the videos. That's not the selection process that most other people would use. So I have quite a high percentage of hybrids. That doesn't mean to say I haven't got any species, and going back to the cotyledons, most of my cotyledons are species. Yeah? Most of my Oncidium types are hybrids or intergeneric type hybrids. Yeah? So it varies. All of my Cymbidiums are hybrids. I've got no species because the species aren't as big and blousy. They're more botanical. And they can be very attractive in their own right. But that's my logic when I'm choosing orchids. So it's a bit different to what most people would think. But quite honestly, if the blooms are good and I can grow the plant, I personally don't care whether it's a hybrid, an intergeneric or a species. If I like the plant and I can grow it, then I will. Right, oh, now we got, it's a short question and an answer that could take all day. And it is a repeat. A.T. Pitke, I think that is. At Pitke, could be. Anyway, A.T. P-I-T-K-I. How much light do Dendrobium nobile type hybrids, things like Comet King, Apollon, need at different times? I've heard different views. Bright light all year, brightest light in summer, brightest light during winter rest, normal light for the rest of the year. I'm confused. Dazed and confused? Extra Roger point if you know where that comes from. And you can sing it on video. That'll shut you up. Thank you in advance. Thank you for saying thank you. Right, Dendrobium nobile type hybrids need as much light as you can give them in winter if you want good blooming. It won't make any difference to the growth because they shouldn't be growing in the winter. They're supposed to be resting, although some will play games and mess you about. But under normal circumstances, your nobile hybrids should be having a rest in winter, and during that time they need the brightest light you can give them, and obviously down on the, well, feeding down to nothing and watering down to the minimum that you can get away with. When they are in their growing season, they don't need bright light to grow well. They need reasonable light. It's no good keeping them in a shady corner, but they need reasonable light. But the trick to play is how bright can you get them in winter, and make sure in the summer they're in less light. And that's the trick. So when they go into their resting period, you can increase the light. If you keep them in bright light all through the year, they're not going to get an increase in winter, are they? and that might reduce your blooming down to not so good, in theory, down to nothing in some cases. So yeah, that's the way I treat mine, and it's always seemed to have worked. So bright light in the winter rest. They don't need such high light in the summer, and if you keep them in less light in the summer, you get a more dramatic change between growing season and resting season. And it's that difference that triggers most of the blooms. Oh, here we go. Steve Thompson. Waste of time, same questions, same answers. And my reply, new viewers, think it through, don't be selfish. And you don't have to watch at the end of the day. If you think all these questions and answers have been done before, then you wouldn't be watching, would you? You'd go and play somewhere else, as they say. Right, next one is another one of these user things. User GC2JY5DH9J. Just slips off the tongue, doesn't it? My question goes like this. Some of my foul leaves have yellow margins all along the outside edges only. Any idea what's going on? It happens very slowly over time, but they kind of look like the leaves have halos. Thank you in advance. That's going to be a difficult one to answer. The fact that it happens over a long period of time, it's not going to be a dramatic effect due to light or anything, I wouldn't have thought. That's liable to be a nutrient deficiency. One of the nutrients is probably a bit deficient, and the plant is drawing in nutrients from the existing leaves. Under normal circumstances that shows down the middle of the leaf rather than the edge. You might have to do a bit of looking up. I can't give a straight answer on this because I don't know what it would be, and I might not even know the answer if I could actually see the leaves. It's odd. That's not normal behaviour. Sorry, I can't answer everything. That's one of those that's not easy. Right, Cindy Forsgren, I think that is. How often should I water new Dendrobium kikis that have been potted in a small bark mix? Well, recently repotted anything in bark, the bark will dry fast because it's new. Takes a while for it to sort of break down its outside edge and start holding water for a bit longer. All bark's like that, some is really bad. I've got some hard bark that you could stand it in water for 48 hours and it still wouldn't be wet. You could take it out, half an hour, it'd be bone dry. It's rock hard, it is like rock, literally. So it's not a question of how often, the answer is when it needs watering. So hopefully you've got them in a clear pot. Look, hold it up, look at it. Is it still wet? It'll dry from the top downwards. Where are your roots? If the roots are all near the top of the pot and the top of the pot's dry, it needs watering even though the bottom of the pot's wet. That would have been better if that's true and they haven't been in the pot long. It might be better to take them out of the pot and repot them lower in the pot so that the only bark they've got is the depth that was drying out at the top, which is probably where the roots are, and that's why it was drying out. But it does evaporate off the top. So I will never ever give a frequency to the question how often should I water. You water when it needs water. Right, where are we now? Laura Poor. Some orchid growers add silica to their orchid water to help them grow thicker leaves and roots and to improve the sturdiness of the plant. What are your thoughts on this? Does that answer your question? Now, I didn't get that to add silica to my plants. I got that because it is incredibly alkaline, and a couple of drops of that will raise your pH quite dramatically. So when I've added all the other bits and pieces into my water for my feed, I end up with a pH that's much lower than I want it. A couple of drips of that and it rockets upwards. to somewhere near where I want it. So that is nutritional potassium silicate. So basically it's 11% potassium, 23% silicon. So yes, I do, but not for the reasons you've given. I use it as a pH up, but that means I'm using it, but only in feed. And it tends to be only when I've got relatively strong mixes of feed. If the mix of feed is not too strong, then the pH doesn't drop far enough to bother. Right, that's that. So yes, I do, but not necessarily for the reasons others might use it. Calcium has a similar effect of strengthening the plant. Yeah, it strengthens up cell walls and things like that, so it has a similar effect. And that's normally in most fertilisers. Well, let's put it this way, it flipping should be. If it's not, you need to add some. Right, Tess Campbell. What's the difference between perlite and grow stones? Are they different compositions or the same? I did say I had to look something up, and I had to look this up. So, what did I find out then? Perlite, which is very, very lightweight, fluffy white stuff, looks a bit like polystyrene nodules sort of thing. Very, very light, weighs nothing. If you go like that, it'll be off around the room. Yeah, that's perlite. Perlite is made from volcanic glass. Now, volcanic glass, from memory, last time I looked, is like, it's sand. It's particles of sand, basically, that have had heat applied or something like that. This is taken away and given extreme heat. To such an extent, it goes off like popcorn and goes pfft, and all fluffs up to sort of like 100 times the size of what it started out with. So that's how perlite is made. It's from a natural substance. So it's using resources from our earth. Yeah? So we don't want to dig the whole mountainside out, do we? Yeah? So that's that. Grow stones, however, are produced from recycled glass. I think it's a similar process, I'm not sure. The process I don't really know. The main reason I didn't bother going into any extremes things is I think this came down to one remaining company producing grow stones that then stopped. The reason they stopped is it's very high energy use to produce the grow stones. And with the massive increase in energy costs around the world, they became non-viable. Because to take that on board and increase the prices to cover their costs, nobody'd buy them. So I think they just stopped doing business. That's that. Oh, I think we're on the last one now. And this is Susan Crease. I think that's K-R-E-I-S. I think that's how that's pronounced. And this looks like it's an essay. Read more. Let's get the read more up and see what we're dealing with here. If it goes off the page, I'm stopping halfway down. Oh, it is a long one. Right. Hi Roger, perfect timing for the Q's and A's because last week I received a couple of new orchids from a grower in California. This was a first time purchase from this grower and these orchids arrived very healthy, reasonably sized and in great shape, but were potted in long coconut husk fibre, not coconut coir or coconut coir bark. This medium looks like long brown hay or pine tags. I don't know what a pine tag is. I've never seen this medium used before, and from your description nor have I. And when I saw it I thought it was some kind of extra special packaging material used during shipping and tried to pull it off and nearly pulled the plant out the pot. Anyway, it turns out the grower put some information about long coconut husk fibre out on YouTube because he gets so many questions about it. Well, yes. My question to you is, have you ever seen this type of media? Simple answer to the long essay, no. And if so, what would your opinion be? Right, well, my first opinion, always, anything with the word coconut in it, where do the coconuts come from? They come from the coast. They've normally got salt in them. And that needs to be got rid of. Now, hopefully, the person using the long fibre coconut husk. This is obviously the strandy stuff around the outside of the coconut, I presume. That will be inside the nice green shiny shell, but not the actual shell of the nut itself. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Yeah? So the closest I've ever come to that was some stuff that comes from the Far East, Callias mainly, where they use pieces of the coconut husk, and basically they get 3 or 4 strips of this, put the plant in the middle with some moss, put the pieces around the outside and strap it, so the plant is contained inside, and then the roots grow through it as it starts to break down. And trying to repot that is almost impossible. You will damage roots badly. But that's as close as I've ever come to it. But any type of coconut will have salt in it when it's, when it's raw in its origins, because of where it comes from. Certainly the cocoa husk that you can buy in bags, often used for reptile bedding and stuff, it's full of salt, absolutely full of it. It takes 3 or 4 thorough rinses before it's even workable. So take care, I would imagine, if this person's decided to use this. Anything to do with coconut is dirt cheap if you can get it from source. Because it's just lying around, it's a freebie basically. So certainly out in the Far East it's used to a greater extent because it's a free resource basically. It's lying around on the beach sort of thing. So go steady, but no, I haven't heard of it, not in the way you've described. And I would just be on the cautious side, and if you want to know, if you've got a TDS meter, get some of it and put it to one side in a glass of pure water, so either RO water, rainwater, but measure the TDS of the water first, leave that stuff in to soak overnight and see what it is in the morning. And if the TDS has rocketed, it's got salts in it and it'll need a good rinse. Right, that is it. Let me just refresh the page in case any have snuck in while we've been talking.
Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for
No, I didn't say play the video, I just said refresh the comments. Listening to my own video. Strangely enough, I do that. When I put a video together, I play it back in case anything's gone wrong, rather than just publish it and then somebody else tell me something's gone wrong. So where are we? Sort by newest first, and that is the top one. Yes, so there we go. A questions and answers session. All the same questions, all the same answers. Well, don't watch then. But as I said, these things come and go and are often catering for new people that haven't had a questions and answers session before. So none of those questions would be repeats for those people, so they're worth doing. And like I said, I quite enjoy doing them. So that's the Sunday chat. I won't be adding anything else on the end, that's probably quite long enough. I can't actually see the camera from here, it's too far away, can't read the numbers. But it's certainly long enough, and hope you've enjoyed it. This video will be added to a playlist of questions and answers videos. So there are other videos on the channel like this, yeah? So you could go and watch some of those if you like this sort of thing. You never know, some questions might come up that you are suitable for yourself, questions you might have thought about yourself. But they're there if you want to go and find them. And this one will be in the playlist so you can identify the playlist. Yeah, and there we go. And today we're not going to do anything else because Ronnie O'Sullivan's playing snooker on the telly. So there's a place in there ready for me to flake out in and get Ronnie O'Sullivan up. That's why this video is a little bit late, because he was on the first session, 10 o'clock this morning. In this tournament they have 3 sessions a day, and that includes a morning session, and I've noticed some of the top players are not playing as well as they do normally if they're in the morning session. Could it be that they've only just got out of bed? Only had 1 coffee? It sounds like a good idea to me, to put people of that type of sport that needs to be all relaxed and ready to go first thing in the morning when they've just got out of bed. Anyway, that's what I should be doing for the rest of today. I've got no idea what I'll be doing for the rest of the week. I'll work that out as the week progresses. But thanks for joining me in the questions and answers. And if they're your questions, I hope you got an answer that suits you. And if not, tough. That's what I can do. That's the best I can do. And there's some questions that are just impossible to answer without actually having the plant in your hand. So they can be difficult. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.